The diplomat's discovery, Ambassador Felix shifted uncomfortably in his seat as the Galactic Council session droned on. His forearms folded and unfolded nervously across his iridescent carapace while his compound eyes scanned the vast chamber. The Great Hall of Unity housed representatives from over 3,000 civilizations, each species more bizarre than the last. Some floated in containment fields of exotic gases, others sat encased in mechanical suits, while many appeared in holographic form from distant worlds. But one seat remained conspicuously empty. It always had. Earth's seat. The massive ornate chair positioned at the center of the Council's inner circle had remained vacant for over 3 centuries. No human ever sat there, despite humanity's official status as founding members of the Galactic Council. Felix had only recently been appointed as the Neare Confederation's ambassador. His species, with their insectoid features and exceptional diplomatic abilities, were relative newcomers to galactic politics. However, this mystery had pestered him from the moment he first witnessed the empty seat during his orientation. And therefore, the proposal to establish mining rights in the Etherix Nebula will be put to vote in the next session, announced High Chancellor Vorax, his gelatinous body pulsating with each word. This council is adjourned. The chamber erupted in movement as delegates rose to leave. Felix remained seated, his gaze fixed on that empty chair. He barely noticed when Councillor Jean, a towering avian from the elder species, settled beside him. Still fixated on the human's chair, young Felix. Jean's voice was melodic, almost hypnotic. Felix's antennae twitched in embarrassment. Forgiveness, Elder Jean. I find it perplexing. Why maintain an empty seat for centuries? Why honor a species that refuses to participate? Jean's feathers rustled. Not refuses, Ambassador. Unable. Unable? Humanity achieved faster than light travel before most of us. Their technological prowess during first contact was unprecedented. What could possibly prevent them from sending a single representative? Jean stood abruptly, eyes darting around the now empty chamber. Some questions are dangerous, young one, especially when asked aloud. But surely as a council member, I have the right to. Visit the archives, Jean whispered, cutting him off. Section 42X, use access code Sentinel Horizon, but speak of this to no one. With that, the elder glided away, leaving Felix alone with his confusion. The council archives occupied 50 subterranean levels beneath the chamber. Felix nodded to the security drones as he passed through multiple checkpoints, his diplomatic credentials granting him access to most areas. However, when he reached the entrance to Section 42X, a force field barred his way. Restricted area, announced the automated system. Council authorization required. Felix hesitated, then whispered, Sentinel Horizon. The force field shimmered and dissolved. Beyond lay a small, dimly lit chamber filled with ancient data crystals and physical documents, an unusual sight in this digital age. The air felt heavy, charged with forgotten secrets. For hours, Felix pored over records dating back to humanity's first contact with the galactic community. Earth had been discovered by Jean's people, the Avis, who had been astonished to find a civilization on the brink of interstellar travel despite having no prior contact with alien species. Humanity had been welcomed into the galactic fold with great fanfare, their ingenuity and adaptability greatly admired. Then, 3 decades later, everything changed. The records became fragmented. Reports of bizarre stellar phenomena near Earth's solar system, urgent communications between human leaders and the Council. Then, abruptly, a final message from Earth's government. We withdraw from Council participation effective immediately. Earth's seat shall remain empty but never surrendered. Do not follow us. Do not seek us. When the time comes, we will return. The message was followed by the systematic withdrawal of all human outposts, colonies, and ships from Council space. Within a single galactic standard year, humanity had vanished completely. The Council's response had been chaotic. Some had demanded investigation. Others had advocated respect for human wishes. In the end, a compromise. Earth's seat would remain, honoring the founding agreement, but humanity's absence would be accepted without pursuit. What had compelled an entire species to isolate itself so completely? The official records offered no answers, only more questions. As Felix was about to leave, he noticed a small, unmarked data crystal nearly hidden behind other documents. Curiosity overcoming caution, he inserted it into his personal reader. A hologram appeared, a human male in what appeared to be a military uniform, his face haggard with exhaustion. This is Admiral James Chen, Earth Defense Command. The recording began. If you're viewing this, the Council has either decided to investigate our disappearance or sufficient time has passed that our security measures have failed. The Admiral took a deep breath. What I'm about to say violates every protocol, but I cannot in good conscience leave the galaxy blind to what's coming. During deep space exploration beyond the outer rim, we discovered something ancient, something watching. We don't know what they are, but they noticed us noticing them. The hologram flickered as the Admiral leaned closer. They'd exist in the void between galaxies. They've destroyed civilizations before. We found the evidence. And now they're coming. Not immediately, but they're coming. The Council would panic, try to fight conventionally, and lose everything. We need time to prepare differently. The Admiral's eyes hardened. Earth has withdrawn to become the galaxy's shield. We're establishing a defensive perimeter at the edge of the darkness. We're adapting their own technologies against them. We need secrecy to work to prepare. The recording began to degrade, the Admiral's image breaking apart. If anyone finds this, follow the repeating signal at frequency 957.31 Hz. It will lead to our first outpost. But come alone. Trust no. The message ended abruptly. Felix sat motionless, his mind reeling. If this was true, humanity hadn't abandoned the galaxy. They had sacrificed themselves to protect it. 3 days later, Felix stood before the Council in emergency session, the data crystal's contents now public knowledge. The chamber buzzed with alarm and disbelief. This is preposterous, thundered Chancellor Vorex. Ancient destroyers, a human shield. This has all the hallmarks of human melodrama and deception. Then why withdraw at the height of their integration? Felix countered. Why maintain observation posts at the galactic edge? I've verified the signal exists. Perhaps it's a trap, suggested another counselor. Perhaps they want to lure us to some remote location for their own purposes. Elder Jean had remained silent until now. I was there, the avian said quietly, silencing the chamber. I was there when the humans discovered what awaits us. I saw the evidence they brought back, fragments of technologies beyond our comprehension, recordings of vast entities moving between stars as easily as we move between rooms. Why didn't you tell us? Demanded Vorex. Because I swore an oath to them. Jean's voice was heavy with regret. They convinced our elders that secrecy was necessary, that panic would doom us all. We agreed to help spread the narrative of their voluntary withdrawal. Enough. Vorex's body pulsated with fury. This changes nothing. Whatever humanity discovered, whatever they claim to be doing, it is not our concern. They chose their path, we will continue on ours. Felix couldn't believe what he was hearing. Chancellor, if this threat is real, then humanity will face it alone, as they chose to do. Vorex's tone brooked no argument. I am ordering a security lockdown on all information regarding this matter. No vessels will be permitted to approach Earth's solar system or investigate this signal. This discussion is concluded. As the council members dispersed, Felix found himself once again alone with Elder Jean. They won't listen, Felix said bitterly, even when faced with existential threat. Fear makes fools of us all, Jean replied softly. The council would rather deny a distant danger than confront an uncomfortable truth. What will you do, Elder? Jean's ancient eyes regarded him solemnly. I am bound by oaths older than your civilization, young ambassador. But you are bound only by your conscience. Felix understood the unspoken suggestion. My personal vessel can detect the signal. If I were to disappear for a while, perhaps on a spiritual retreat. The outer reaches of the Sagittarius arm are said to be most conducive to meditation. Jean observed with deliberate casualness. Though the journey is perilous for one traveling alone. Then perhaps I should bring a guide, Felix mused. Someone knowledgeable about human affairs. Jean's eyes glinted. My aide Kira is half human on her maternal side. She might find such a journey enlightening. Felix nodded slowly. When does the council's travel ban take effect? In precisely 26 hours. Then we have no time to waste. Felix's vessel, the Star Seeker, slipped away from the council hub station with minimum fanfare. As a diplomatic craft, it bypassed most security protocols and its filed flight plan. A routine journey to Felix's homeworld raised no alarms. Only once they had cleared the main transit lanes did Felix program the true coordinates, following the faint pulsing signal that had been broadcasting for centuries. In the co-pilot's seat, Kira adjusted controls with practiced ease. Her features were mostly avian, but her eyes, startlingly blue and round, betrayed her human heritage. My grandmother was among the last to leave, she said quietly as they prepared for the jump to faster-than-light travel. She never told my mother why, only that it was necessary. And now we may finally learn the truth, Felix replied. The ship shuddered as the FTL drive engaged. Beyond the viewport, stars stretched into streaks of light as the Star Seeker hurtled toward the edge of known space and whatever waited beyond. Neither of them noticed the Council security cruiser that disengaged from a nearby station and fell into pursuit, maintaining just enough distance to avoid detection. The hunt was on, and the greatest secret in galactic history was about to be revealed. Guardians of the Void. The Starseeker dropped out of FTL at the outermost edge of charted space. Before them stretched a vast emptiness, the boundary where the Milky Way's spiral arms surrendered to intergalactic void. Behind them lay the familiar, the known. Ahead, only darkness punctuated by the distant smudges of neighboring galaxies. The signal strengthens here, Kira said, her taloned fingers dancing across the navigation console. But I'm detecting no stations, no outposts, nothing that would indicate human presence. Felix's antennae twitched nervously. After a week of travel, they had reached their destination only to find emptiness. Could the Admiral's message have been false? A misdirection? No, Kira's voice was firm. The signal is definitely human in origin. It's using encryption protocols consistent with Earth Defense Command. She frowned at her readings. There's something else. Unusual energy patterns scattered throughout this sector. Almost like... The ship lurched violently, throwing them against the restraints. Warning lights flashed across every console as the engines shut down. What's happening? Felix demanded, his exoskeleton clicking anxiously. We've been caught in some kind of energy net, Kira replied, frantically trying to restart the engines. It's disabled our primary systems. The viewport darkened as an enormous shadow passed over their vessel. Felix looked up to see a massive ship materializing before them, its hull bristling with weapons unlike any he had ever seen. The vessel had appeared from nowhere, as if emerging from the fabric of space itself. Stealth technology, whispered Kira in awe. Beyond anything the Council possesses. A harsh light bathed their cockpit as scanners swept over them. Then a voice, distorted and mechanical, filled their communications system. Unidentified vessel, you have entered restricted space. Identify yourselves and state your purpose. Felix exchanged a glance with Kira before activating the comm. This is Ambassador Felix of the Neare Confederation and Kira, aide to Elder Jean of the Avis. We followed the signal at frequency 957.31 Hz as instructed in Admiral Chen's message. Silence stretched for nearly a minute. Then prepare to be boarded. Any resistance will result in immediate neutralization. The Starseeker shuddered as docking clamps seized it, drawing it toward the massive vessel. Through the viewport, Felix could now see markings on the larger ship's hull, faded emblems of Earth Defense Command alongside symbols he didn't recognize. What do we do? Asked Kira, fear evident in her voice despite her attempt at composure. We came for answers, Felix replied, steadying himself. It appears the humans are ready to provide them. The docking procedure completed with mechanical precision. When the airlock opened, they found themselves facing three figures in powered armor, their faces hidden behind opaque visors. Each carried weapons that hummed with barely restrained energy. Follow. Do not deviate, ordered the central figure. They were led through corridors that seemed disproportionately large, as if designed for beings far larger than humans. The ship itself was a paradox, clearly of human origin, yet incorporating technologies that appeared almost organic in nature, the pulsing conduits and surfaces that shifted subtly as they passed. Finally, they entered what appeared to be a command center. Dozens of humans worked at stations arranged in concentric circles around a central holographic display showing their position at the galaxy's edge. What struck Felix immediately was the diversity of the crew. While some appeared fully human, others displayed subtle modifications, enhanced limbs, optical implants, skin with metallic undertones. A woman approached them, her uniform bearing the insignia of high rank. Unlike the others, she appeared entirely unmodified, a baseline human with dark skin, close-cropped gray hair, and eyes that spoke of decades of vigilance. I am Captain Alina Reyes, commanding officer of the EDC Vigilant, she said, her voice carrying the weight of authority. You traveled a long way based on a message that should have remained hidden. Felix straightened to his full height. Captain, the Council deserves to know why humanity withdrew. What threat could possibly justify? You speak of deserving truth. Reyes interrupted, yet your Council has thrived on comfortable lies for centuries. She gestured toward the holographic display. Kira, you carry human blood. What do you see when you look at this map? Kira studied the display. The edge of our galaxy. The beginning of intergalactic space. Look deeper. Kira narrowed her eyes, then gasped. Felix followed her gaze and felt his hemolymph run cold. The void between galaxies wasn't empty. Faint, web-like structures stretched between star systems, connecting in patterns too regular to be natural. And at certain junctions in this cosmic web, massive shapes moved, some as large as small moons. We call them the Harvesters, Reyes said quietly. They exist primarily in a dimensional state slightly offset from our own, which is why conventional sensors can't detect them. They've been there for millions of years, feeding on energy from stars, gradually expanding their network. That's impossible, Felix whispered. The Council's astronomical surveys would have. Your surveys see what they're designed to see, Reyes cut in. These entities emit counterspectral radiation that blinds conventional sensors. We'd only discover them by accident when one of our experimental ships suffered a dimensional drive failure and briefly phased into their perceptual realm. Reyes manipulated the display, zooming toward one of the massive entities. Its form defied description, neither mechanical nor biological, but something that incorporated aspects of both, with structures that seemed to fold in on themselves in ways that hurt to look at. They've consumed 12 galaxies that we know of, she continued. When they finish with one, they move to the next. They're patient. Their life cycle spans billions of years, but 3 centuries ago, they noticed us noticing them, and that accelerated their timetable. If what you're saying is true, Felix said carefully, why withdraw? Why not warn the Council, prepare the galaxy together? Reyes' laugh was bitter. We tried. Your precious Council called our evidence fabricated, our warnings paranoid. Those who believed us wanted to launch immediate attacks, which would have been catastrophic. These entities don't just consume energy, they assimilate technology, adapt to weapons used against them. A conventional war would only make them stronger. So Earth chose to stand alone, Kira murmured. Not alone. Reyes gestured around the command center. There were others who believed us, scientists, warriors, visionaries from dozens of species. They came with us when we withdrew. For 3 centuries, we've been building a defense network at the galaxy's edge, developing technologies the Harvesters can easily assimilate, preparing for the inevitable. Felix's mind reeled with implications. How many ships like this do you have? Thousands, Reyes replied. This is just one outpost in a defensive perimeter that spans the entire galactic boundary. Each ship incorporates technology reverse-engineered from Harvester fragments modified to be incompatible with their assimilation protocols. And the empty seat? Felix asked. Why maintain it if you never intended to return? Reyes' expression softened slightly. Hope, Ambassador. Hope that someday when the threat was contained, we could rejoin galactic society. That seat represents a promise we made to ourselves as much as to the Council, that Earth's isolation would not be eternal. A sudden alarm cut through the conversation. A communications officer turned to Reyes, his expression grave. Captain, we're detecting multiple ships dropping out of FTL near our position. Council registry. Reyes' face hardened. How many? A full battle group, ma'am. 17 vessels, including 3 dreadnoughts. They followed us, Kira whispered, turning to Felix with horror. The Council must have tracked our ship. Tactical assessment, Reyes demanded. Another officer responded promptly. Their weapons can't penetrate our defenses, but their presence here is problematic. Several Harvester nodes are active in this sector. If the Council ships engage or use high-energy weapons, they'll attract attention we can't afford, Reyes finished grimly. She turned to Felix. Your arrival has forced my hand, Ambassador. If those ships attack, they'll trigger sensors the Harvesters have placed throughout this region. They would accelerate their timetable by decades. Let me speak to them, Felix pleaded. Explain what you've shown us. Their commanders won't listen any more than your Council did, Reyes replied. But we have no choice but to try. She activated the communications system. Attention Council vessels. This is Captain Alina Reyes of Earth Defense Command. Your presence in this sector constitutes a grave danger to galactic security. Stand down and prepare to receive ambassadorial envoys. The response came swiftly, the voice unmistakably that of Chancellor Vorex. Return Ambassador Felix and the avian hybrid immediately. Your isolation zone is hereby revoked by Council decree. Any resistance will be considered an act of war against the Galactic Council. Reyes' expression remained impassive, but Felix could see the resignation in her eyes. They can't comprehend what they're dealing with, she said quietly. 3 centuries of preparation potentially undone by political arrogance. A tactical officer approached urgently. Captain, the Council ships are charging weapons. Their targeting systems are locking onto our position. Defensive protocols only, Reyes ordered. No offensive measures. Captain, Felix interjected desperately, let me speak to them. As a Council ambassador, they must at least hear me out. Reyes studied him for a moment, then nodded. Make it quick, Ambassador. Once energy weapons discharge in this sector, we may have minutes before the Harvesters investigate. Felix stepped to the communications station. Chancellor Vorex, this is Ambassador Felix. What the humans have shown us is real. The threat they've been preparing against is real. Your actions now could doom the entire galaxy. I beg you, stand down and allow dialogue. Your judgment has been compromised, Ambassador Vorex replied coldly. The humans have clearly influenced your mind with their deceptions. This charade of a cosmic threat is nothing more than justification for their illegal weapons development and territorial expansion. Chancellor, look beyond our position, Felix urged. Use your advanced sensors to scan the void between galaxies. You'll detect anomalies, structures that shouldn't exist, movement where there should be none. A tense silence followed. For a moment, Felix dared to hope. Then, your final warning, Captain Reyes. Power down your systems and prepare to be boarded, or we will open fire. Reyes closed the channel, her face grim. And so it begins. She turned to her tactical officer. Alert all perimeter stations. Activation code Omega. We're out of time. What are you doing? Kira asked, alarmed. The only thing we can do, Reyes replied, bringing the full defensive network online. She looked at Felix with something approaching pity. Your council's actions have forced our hand. The war your people refuse to prepare for is about to begin. A massive holographic display activated, showing thousands of points of light blinking into existence around the galaxy's perimeter, humanity's hidden fleet revealing itself after centuries of secrecy. Captain, called out the sensor officer, panic in his voice. Harvester movement detected, multiple nodes activating across the sector. Beyond the viewport, the void seemed to ripple, as if reality itself was being distorted. Where there had been empty space, colossal shapes now became visible, vast, incomprehensible entities emerging from their dimensional hiding places, drawn by the energy signatures of the Council ships. All hands to battle stations, Reyes ordered calmly. This is what we prepared for. She turned to Felix and Kira. You wanted to know why Earth's seat remained empty. You're about to find out. The lights throughout the ship dim as power diverted to weapons and shields. In the void outside, more human vessels materialize, moving into defensive formations. The Council ships, suddenly faced with both the human fleet and the emerging harvesters, had frozen in confusion. Captain, Felix said quietly, what happens now? Rey's eyes were hard as she watched the harvesters approach. Now, Ambassador, humanity does what it has always done when faced with extinction. She straightened her uniform. We fight. When the stars wept, the void between galaxies erupted with light as the harvesters fully materialized into normal space. Their true forms defied comprehension, vast structures that seemed to exist in more dimensions than the eye could process, constantly shifting between solid matter and energy. Each was the size of a small moon, their surfaces rippling with patterns that hurt to look at directly. Felix stood frozen on the bridge of the Vigilant, his compound eyes struggling to process the impossible entities now surrounding them. The Council battle route, caught between the human defensive fleet and the approaching harvesters, had ceased all movement, their weapons still charged but unfired. They're scanning us, reported a sensor officer, her voice remarkably steady. All 7 harvester nodes in this sector have gone active. Captain Reyes nodded grimly. As expected. Update from the defensive network. All stations report ready, Captain. The Terminus Protocol is armed and awaiting your command. Reyes turned to Felix and Kira. What you're about to witness is the culmination of 3 centuries of preparation. Every human colony, every outpost, every ship we withdrew from Council space, all of it was to build this moment. What is the Terminus Protocol? Kira asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Before Reyes could answer, the communications officer called out, Captain, incoming transmission from the Council flagship. Chancellor Vorax is demanding to speak with you. Put him through, Reyes ordered. The holographic display shifted to show Chancellor Vorax's gelatinous form quivering with what might have been fear. Captain Reyes, what are these entities? Our weapons have no effect on them. These are the harvesters, Chancellor, Reyes replied calmly. The threat humanity warned your predecessors about 3 centuries ago. The reason we withdrew from the Council. The reason Earth's seat remained empty. Impossible, Vorax whispered, though his denial lacked conviction. Such beings cannot exist. And yet they do, Reyes said. They consume a dozen galaxies before ours. They feed on energy, stellar, technological, biological. They assimilate advanced technology and adapt it to their purposes. Conventional weapons only make them stronger. One of the harvesters moved closer to the Council flagship, extending appendages that seemed to phase in and out of reality. The Council ship's shields flared briefly, then failed completely. They're draining our power reserves. Vorax cried, panic evident in his voice. All systems failing. Pull your ships back behind our defensive line, Reyes ordered. We've developed countermeasures that may buy us time. You knew, Vorax accused, even as he signaled his fleet to retreat. You knew these abominations existed, yet you kept this knowledge from the Council. We tried to warn you, Reyes countered. Your predecessors dismissed our evidence. When we realized the Council would either ignore the threat or confront it prematurely, we made the only choice we could. We withdrew to prepare in secret. The human fleet moved with practiced precision, forming a barrier between the Council ships and the approaching harvesters. Smaller vessels deployed what appeared to be energy-dampening fields, creating corridors through which the Council ships could retreat. All Council vessels follow the designated escape routes, Reyes instructed. Do not, under any circumstances, discharge energy weapons. They will only accelerate their attack. Felix watched in awe as the human fleet executed maneuvers that spoke of decades of drilling. Each ship seemed to know exactly where to position itself, creating a complex defensive formation that slowly contracted, drawing the Council ships towards safety while keeping the Harvesters at bay. "How long have you been fighting them?" he asked Reyes. "We haven't been," she replied, her eyes fixed on the tactical display. "Not directly. This is our first real engagement. Everything until now has been observation, preparation, and limited testing of our countermeasures. We've been building toward this moment for generations." A massive harvester, larger than the others, suddenly accelerated toward the retreating Council ships. Several human vessels moved to intercept, deploying what looked like modified gravity wells. The harvester's movement slowed but pressed forward relentlessly. "Quantum disruption fields at maximum," called out the tactical officer, holding at 67% effectiveness. "Not enough," Reyes muttered. She straightened, her decision made. "Activate the Terminus protocol. Target the lead harvester." The command center fell silent. An officer approached for the physical key, which Reyes inserted into a console at her station. A series of authentication procedures followed, requiring biometric confirmation from multiple senior officers. "What exactly is this protocol?" Felix asked, anxiety creeping into his voice. Kira, who had been studying the tactical displays with growing comprehension, answered before Reyes could. "It's a dimensional inversion weapon, isn't it? Something that turns their own phase-shifting capabilities against them." Reyes nodded, impressed. "Precisely. The harvesters exist partially in folded dimensions. The Terminus protocol creates a cascading dimensional collapse that traps them between states of existence. It's the only weapon we've found that they can't adapt to or assimilate." "Terminus protocol armed," announced the weapons officer. "Target locked." "Fire," Reyes ordered. A small, unremarkable vessel detached from the Vigilance underside, accelerating toward the lead harvester. It looked almost primitive compared to the other ships in the human fleet. No visible weapons, minimal shielding, barely larger than a shuttle. "That's your super weapon?" Vorik scoffed from the still-open communication channel. "Size isn't everything, Chancellor," Reyes replied. "Watch and learn." The small vessel reached the harvester and, rather than impacting, seemed to phase directly into it. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the massive entity began to contort, its form twisting in ways that defied physics. Light bent around it as space itself warped. A silent explosion of color erupted from within, not fire or energy, but what looked like the very fabric of reality tearing open. Where the harvester had been, a perfect sphere of absolute darkness now humming space, a localized dimensional collapse that had trapped the entity between reality states. "One down," Reyes said grimly. 6 to go in this sector." The remaining harvesters reacted immediately, their movements becoming more aggressive. They began emitting pulses of energy that disrupted the human ship's systems, forcing them to fall back. "They're adapting faster than we anticipated," reported the tactical officer. "Terminus delivery vessels 2 and 3 are having difficulty approaching targets." Reyes' expression remained resolute. "Deploy the phase-shifted fighter squadrons. Have them clear paths for the delivery vessels." Hundreds of small craft launched from the larger human ships, their hulls shimmering with the same dimensional technology that made them partially out of phase with normal space. They swarmed around the harvesters, firing weapons that seemed to cause the entities pain or at least disruption. "Remarkable," whispered Felix. "You've weaponized their own dimensional properties. It took us centuries to understand even the basics of their technology," Reyes explained. "Every advancement came at a terrible cost. Entire research teams lost to dimensional accidents, test ships vanishing with all hands, colonies sacrificed as bait to capture harvester specimens." Another harvester succumbed to the Terminus protocol, collapsing into a sphere of nothingness. But the human fleet was taking heavy losses now. Ships disappeared in bursts of twisted light as the harvesters targeted them with increasingly effective counterattacks. "We're losing too many vessels," the tactical officer reported. "The harvesters are adapting to our phase-shifting technology." Reyes' jaw tightened. This was always a possibility. "Initiate contingency Omega." A hush fell over the bridge. Whatever this contingency was, it clearly represented a last resort. "Catman," protested her executive officer, "Omega hasn't been fully tested. The simulations showed a 30% chance of cascading dimensional collapse that could spread beyond the target area." "We're out of options, Commander," Reyes replied, her voice steady despite the weight of her decision. "The harvesters are adapting too quickly. If we don't act now, they'll break through and reach populated systems." She turned to her communications officer. "Send the coded signal to all defensive stations. Omega protocol authorized." Throughout the galaxy's edge, thousands of human outposts received the signal. Stations that had remained hidden for centuries began powering up systems that had never before been activated outside of simulations. On the holographic display, Felix watched in awe as new energy signatures bloomed along the entire galactic perimeter, a complete ring of power encircling the Milky Way. "What is happening?" demanded Chancellor Vorex, who had remained connected throughout the battle. "Something that should have required another decade of preparation," Reyes answered grimly. Kira gasped in understanding. "You're sealing off the Milky Way? Cutting it off from the rest of the universe?" "Not permanently," Reyes clarified, "but long enough to trap the harvesters that have already entered our space, while preventing reinforcements from arriving." The remaining Council ships had retreated to a safe distance, their crews watching in stunned silence as humanity's true defensive network revealed itself. Not merely ships and stations, but massive dimensional anchors positioned strategically around the galaxy's circumference, each capable of generating a localized field that altered the fundamental properties of spacetime. "Energy buildup at 90%, reported an officer. "Dimensional field generators synchronizing." The harvesters sensed the impending activation. They abandoned their attack on the human fleet and began racing toward the nearest generators, intent on stopping whatever was about to happen. "They understand what we're doing," Felix observed. "They should," Reyes replied. "We reverse-engineered this technology from their own dimensional shifting capabilities. We're turning their greatest strength into the galaxy's shield." A harvester reached one of the generator stations and began tearing into it. The station's crew fought desperately to buy time, knowing they would not survive. "Station Delta 7 is compromised," reported the tactical officer. Generator failing. Reyes' face remained impassive, though her eyes revealed the cost of her command. "Reroute power from adjacent stations. We need complete coverage, or the barrier will fail." The remaining generators compensated, channeling additional energy to cover the gap. The entire network pulsed with power beyond anything Felix had ever witnessed. "Field synchronization complete," announced the operations officer. "Initiating dimensional barrier in 3, 2, 1. A wave of distortion swept outward from each generator, spreading across the void like ripples in a pond. Where these waves met, they reinforced each other, creating a shimmering wall of altered reality that enveloped the galaxy's edge. The harvesters caught within this field began to convulse, their forms twisting as they found themselves trapped between dimensional states. Unable to fully materialize, yet unable to retreat. Barrier established, the operations officer confirmed. All harvester entities within the target zone successfully contained. A cheer erupted across the bridge, quickly silenced by Reyes' hand. "This is only the beginning," she cautioned. "The barrier requires constant maintenance, and the harvesters trapped inside are still a threat we must eliminate one by one." She turned to the communications officer. "Open a channel to all Council vessels." When the connection was established, Reyes addressed not only Chancellor Vorex, but the commanders of every Council ship. "The immediate threat has been contained, but our work is far from complete. The dimensional barrier will hold for now, but it requires maintenance and defense. The harvesters trapped within our galaxy must be hunted down and eliminated using the Terminus Protocol." Vorex's gelatinous form rippled with what might have been shame. "Captain Reyes, a Council owes humanity a debt we can never repay. For centuries, we dismissed your warnings even as you sacrificed everything to protect us." "Not everything, Chancellor," Reyes corrected. "Not yet. But the time for secrets and isolation is over. Humanity requires the Council's aid if we're to eliminate the harvesters completely and strengthen the barrier against those still waiting outside." Felix stepped forward. "Captain Reyes, I believe I speak for many when I say that the Council will finally listen. Earth's empty seat has stood as a reminder of our failure, a failure we now have the opportunity to correct." Reyes studied the ambassador thoughtfully. "Perhaps, but first, you must understand what this victory has cost us." She gestured toward a display showing Earth's solar system. "In activating the Omega Protocol prematurely, we've had to divert power from our homeworld's defenses. Earth itself is now vulnerable." The display shifted to show a harvester entity that had broken through the defensive line during the battle, not one of the massive nodes they had been fighting, but a smaller scout that had evaded detection. It was heading directly toward Earth. "Our defensive network is committed to maintaining the galactic barrier," Reyes continued. "We cannot divert resources to intercept this entity before it reaches our homeworld." "Then what can be done?" asked Kira, horror evident in her voice. Reyes' expression hardened with resolve. "We fight as humans have always fought, with whatever we have left." She turned to her executive officer. "Commander, set course for Earth, maximum speed. Alert all available vessels in the Sol system to prepare for defensive action." "And the Council ships?" Felix asked. "That's up to the Chancellor," Reyes replied, looking directly at Vorex's hologram. "Humanity has stood alone at the edge of darkness for 3 centuries. The question now is whether we'll continue to stand alone when our own home is threatened." Vorex was silent for a long moment. Then, "All Council vessels, form up with the human fleet. Set course for Earth." Today, we repay our debt. The journey to Earth took 3 days, even at maximum FTL speeds. By the time the combined human council fleet arrived, the Harvester Scout had already reached the solar system and was approaching Earth's orbit. From the bridge of the Vigilant, Felix saw Earth for the first time. A blue-green jewel suspended in space, beautiful despite the circumstances. But the planet was not defenseless. Orbital platforms surrounded it, their designs clearly incorporating the same dimensional technology as the defensive fleet. Most of Earth's population was evacuated centuries ago, Reyes explained as they approached. Those who remained were primarily military personnel and their families, all volunteers committed to maintaining our vigil. Fewer than 100 million humans still call Earth home. The Harvester Scout was engaged with Earth's orbital defenses, its appendages tearing through stations with frightening efficiency. Unlike the massive nodes they had fought at the galaxy's edge, this entity was smaller, faster, more agile, but no less deadly. Analysis? Reyes demanded. Scout-class Harvester, reported the tactical officer. Primarily designed for reconnaissance rather than direct engagement, but still capable of significant damage. Earth's defenses are holding, but several orbital platforms have already been compromised. Do we have any Terminus delivery vessels ready? One, Captain. But against a Scout-class target, its maneuverability may be insufficient. Reyes nodded thoughtfully. Then we need a more precise delivery system. She turned to her executive officer. Prepare my shuttle. Load the Terminus device manually. A stunned silence fell over the bridge. The executive officer found his voice first. Captain, that's a suicide mission. The delivery system isn't designed for manual targeting. It is now, Reyes replied firmly. I study the Harvesters longer than anyone. I know their movements, their patterns. I can get close enough. No, Kira stepped forward, her avian features set with determination. I'll do it. My reflexes are faster, my neural mapping more compatible with your guidance systems. You said yourself that you're needed to coordinate the overall defense. She's right, Captain, added Felix. And I'll go with her. My species' exoskeleton provides natural radiation shielding. I can protect the Terminus device until the final approach. Reyes studied them both, clearly weighing the unexpected offer against her own responsibility. Finally, she nodded. Very well, but you need training quickly. The approach must be perfect. Hours later, a small shuttle detached from the Vigilant and accelerated toward Earth, where the Harvester continued its assault on the orbital defenses. Inside, Kira piloted while Felix monitored the Terminus device, a surprisingly small object that pulsed with otherworldly energy. Remember, Reyes' voice came through their comms, you must get within 50 meters for the device to properly phase into the Harvester's dimensional structure. Any farther, and it may not fully collapse the entity. Understood, Captain, Kira replied, her hands steady on the controls despite the gravity of their mission. Approaching target now. The Harvester sensed their approach and turned its attention from the orbital platforms to their tiny vessel. Appendages that phased between dimensions reached toward them, distorting space as they extended. Evasive maneuvers, Felix warned as energy readings spiked. Kira's piloting skills proved remarkable. She rolled a shuttle through impossible angles, using the Harvester's own distortion field to slingshot them closer rather than farther away. Each pass brought them nearer to the entity's core, the point where the Terminus device would be most effective. We have one chance at this, Kira said, her voice tight with concentration. On the next pass, I'll get us close enough. Be ready to activate the device. Felix positioned himself at the airlock, the Terminus device secured in his 4 arms. Ready. The shuttle swung around for its final approach, accelerating directly toward what appeared to be the Harvester's central mass. Energy beams lashed out, grazing their shields and sending cascading failures throughout the shuttle's systems. Shields failing. Hull integrity at 60%. Felix called out as warning lights flashed around them. Almost there, Kira replied through gritted teeth. 20 seconds to optimal position. The Harvester seemed to understand their intent. It contracted, pulling its appendages inward in an attempt to protect its core. But Kira had anticipated this, adjusting their trajectory to intercept the entity at its most vulnerable point. Now, she shouted as they passed directly through the Harvester's outer field. Felix slammed his hand against the airlock release. The sudden decompression propelled him and the Terminus device into space directly toward the Harvester's core. Using his body's natural momentum control, he oriented himself to ensure the device would make contact at precisely the right point. The last thing he saw before activating the device was Earth below him. Beautiful, vulnerable, worth any sacrifice. He pressed the activation sequence. Light and darkness merged around him as the dimensional collapse began. The Harvester's form twisted, contracted, and then imploded in on itself, creating a perfect sphere of nothingness that began to shrink almost immediately. Felix felt his consciousness stretching, spreading across multiple dimensional states as the collapse pulled him in. Yet somehow, he remained aware, suspended at the edge of reality. Then something unexpected happened. The beam of energy from the vigilant lanced through space, catching him in what felt like a tractor field. He was being pulled away from the collapsing dimensional void back toward the human vessel. Phase-shifted retrieval successful, he heard someone say as his consciousness reasserted itself in normal space. Both the ambassador and the pilot have been recovered. 1 month later, Felix stood in the Grand Chamber of the Galactic Council. The hall was packed to capacity. Representatives from every member species gathered for what would be remembered as the most momentous session in Council history. Chancellor Vorex addressed the assembly, his form elevated on the central platform. For 3 centuries, we lived in ignorance of the threat that loomed beyond our galaxy's edge. For 3 centuries, humanity stood alone against that darkness, sacrificing their place among us to become our unseen guardians. He gestured toward where Captain Reyes stood, flanked by a delegation of human officers. Today, we acknowledge that debt. Today, we welcome humanity back to their rightful place in this council. A solemn procession began. 6 representatives from elder species approached Earth's empty seat at the center of the chamber. They removed the ceremonial covering that had draped it for centuries, revealing a chair made of materials found only on Earth, woods and metals crafted with distinctly human aesthetics. Captain Reyes stepped forward, but instead of taking the seat herself, she turned to address the council. For 300 years, humanity has watched from the shadows, building a defense that would protect all sentient life in this galaxy. That work is not yet complete. The dimensional barrier must be maintained. The harvesters trapped within our galaxy must be hunted down, and those waiting beyond must be permanently deterred. She surveyed the chamber, her gaze meeting Felix briefly before continuing. We cannot do this alone, nor should we. The time for isolation has passed. Earth does not return to claim leadership, but to offer partnership. The knowledge we have gained, the technologies we have developed, all will be shared with the Council, that together we might secure our galaxy's future. Chancellor Vorex moved to stand beside her. Let this day mark the beginning of a new era, an era of unity, of shared purpose. The harvester threat remains, but no longer will humanity face it alone. The chamber erupted in unanimous approval. As the formal proceedings continued, Felix found himself standing alongside Kira and Captain Reyes near Earth's seat, now occupied by a human representative for the first time in history. Earth's seat was empty for centuries, Felix observed quietly. Yet in truth, humanity never abandoned the galaxy. They merely stepped into the shadows to become its guardians. Reyes nodded, her eyes reflecting both weariness and hope. Sometimes the greatest sacrifices are those no one knows you've made. Until now, that was our burden to bear. And now, asked Kira. Reyes looked out of the council chamber at the representatives of 1,000 worlds now united in common cause. Now we face the darkness together, as we always should have. Beyond the council hub, the dimensional barrier shimmered at the galaxy's edge, humanity's gift and legacy. And across that barrier in the void between galaxies, the harvesters waited, thwarted for the first time in their ancient existence. The war was far from over, but for the first time in centuries, hope outshone fear in the Milky Way. Earth's seat was empty no more, and the galaxy would never be the same again.